Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a great interest in helping parents, as you probably know. And this episode is with a very special therapist and parent coach. This is the most beautiful Sophie Schauermann. She is located in Denver, Colorado. Her spirit is as beautiful as her face. Her passion and expertise lie in supporting highly sensitive children and their parents in harnessing their sensitivities into their superpowers. It is a great honor, Sophie, to have you here. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here and talk with you and your listeners.
Yes. So nice. So you're the founder of Rooted Rhythm Therapy and Parent Coaching. And this particular sort of modality was born out of the belief that children must get to know the beat of their own drum in order to confidently reach their potential. And that the best kind of parent, in your estimation, is one also rooted in their own rhythm. You support your clients, Sophie, with Synergetic Play Therapy, EMDR, which I can't wait to talk about. I've had really great success with that personally, and also Ketamine Assisted Psychotherapy. You have over 10 years of experience working closely with children and families in many settings, including, the Harvard Medical School's Laboratory for Youth Mental Health, the public school system, and community-based mental health programs. You're now in private practice. It is very exciting to talk to somebody of your caliber, particularly in this realm. Let's start with how this happened. What gave you the idea and the catalyst to start working with highly sensitive kids?
Yeah, I was a highly sensitive child myself, for sure. Didn't know it until later, but when I look back and I connect with my little one, meaning the younger version of me, I see that one with tummy aches and worries and kind of that child that held the weight of the world on her shoulders really came from what today gets to be a big part of my superpower, like having access to a depth of processing and intuition and intensity in a good way. And I can share a little bit more about how I became a therapist and got into the mental health field. But in that journey, I found myself working with a lot of sensitive children, often misdiagnosed with attention issues, even sometimes misdiagnosed with anxiety, although I think anxiety can come alongside sensitivities, depression, even oppositional defiant disorder, like those that are acting out. And I knew there had to be an answer other than there's something wrong with you, especially because those kiddos were the ones that when they felt like something was wrong with them, they really contracted and actually engaged in more difficult behaviors. And so when I came across the work of Dr. Elaine Aron, who has done decades of research on the highly sensitive person, it all just clicked. It was like, wow, this isn't a disorder, it's a trait. And it comes with brilliance and exceptionality, but without proper understanding for the kids and their parents that come with these sensitivities, it can create a lot of difficulty being human.
You know, what's interesting is I remember feeling a lot of the things that you've just described as a kid and not giving it any credence because there wasn't languaging around it.
Mm-hmm.
Just being worried or, feeling in some way that things were not right and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it.
I imagine you might fit this 15 to 20% of the population as well. the traits that Dr. Elaine Aron found in her research that was originally focused on the shy and introverted child. However, later it was extended to just a sensitive person because, myself including, some sensitive people are actually pretty extroverted or at least come across that way. It's things like having a depth of processing, feeling things intensely, being able to sense the subtle. And when misunderstood, it can just become energy in the body that manifests in worries and confusion.
That feels very true for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. When you work with kids now in this sort of mode in which you work, rooted to rhythm, can you talk a little bit about what that really means, rooted rhythm therapy, and what coaching work entails for the families that might be considering this work?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely interested in sharing that. And my intention coming into this call today was just the hope that someone listening to this would feel a softening towards their sensitive child, because it can become very intense to support a child with very big feelings. And the opposite of what our body wants to do, which is tense up, is what they need. And that really is at the root of my work. It's for parents to find trust again, that they actually have capacity to hold their children in their intense feelings. And the way that I support families in that is a kind of two-pronged approach. On one side, I'm supporting parents in learning tools, like how do you physically, energetically, emotionally increase your capacity to hold space for your kids' feelings so that they feel trusted to move through them, which is usually a combination of really congruent and true attunement, so that it's not just like reading the parenting script of what should I say to my child while they're having a feeling. It's a really deep and true way of being available and present for your child when they're in their big feelings, as well as boundaries and loving containment, because sometimes it can become even more dysregulating for a child with no boundaries that's having these big feelings.
Right.
So there's a lot that I do with parents on the parent coaching side of things. Like I mentioned, the tools, but also parents' own therapeutic work, because we have our own imprinting of how we were parented and cultural values on how we should teach our children to be. And it's really deep work that parents are asked to do to open to these super wise, intuitive, empathetic children that, in my belief, have chosen them. So that's the work that I'm doing with parents, with lectures and modules and education, as well as just one-on-one support. And then for those that live in Denver that are able to come into my office, I'm also a trained licensed therapist here in Colorado, and I see children in a play therapy setting. So I'm actually sitting in my playroom at the moment and looking out at the mountains, and children get to come in here and they have space to show me what's happening within their inner world. And so I
And when
take
you
it on to,
say,
yeah.
sorry, when you say big feelings, I think this is the one thing that I really want. Perhaps there are parents here who think their child's temper tantrum is alternately their fault or the kid's fault or nature's fault. Emphasis on the word fault. And I would like to really get clear for myself and for my listener on what exactly big feelings are and how exactly they're not anyone's fault.
Mm-hmm. Well, emotion is energy in motion. There's science on that, like what it is in the body. And there's research that for the highly sensitive person, I'll say we because I'm one as well, as I mentioned, we actually take in feelings bigger and for longer. So, for example, there was a study of highly sensitive people looking at pictures of positive things like birthday cakes and puppies, as well as negative things like car crashes and snakes. And their brains actually lit up and stayed lit up for longer than the non sensitive person. So it's a different type of brain. It's one that like takes in the feeling, holds onto it, gets amped about it for better and for worse, and generally just needs some support and some tools to learn what to do with that, which very much includes not making oneself wrong. And so it's nothing to do with what a parent is doing or not doing, or what the school is doing or not doing. And so much to do with how a person or a child's brain and heart are perceiving the world.
Okay, that makes sense to me. My kid wasn't so much a big temper tantrum person, but I've seen a lot of big feelings in my kids, sometimes other kids, back when he was small. It's funny how little we're taught as human beings about parenting and how we need a license for a car and we need a license to drink. We need to be a certain age, but we don't need a license to become a parent. And I feel like that is something that is sorely lacking. The education that you're providing is extraordinary and important. That's why you're here. I would like for you to add a little bit now for our listener who might be a parent of a highly sensitive child and is just sort of tuning into this, or maybe their child is already grown and they're just realizing they have a highly sensitive child. What are some of the ways in which we as parents can deal with those highly sensitive outbursts when they happen sort of way out of context and in places, maybe even public places, where we just have no tools and we're never taught by our parents how to manage something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few different things might be happening. So I like to teach parents to meet kiddos in the brain state that they are showing. So you may be looking at your 7-year-old and asking yourself, why are you acting like a 2-year-old? Come on, be 7. But the truth is, they're actually in touch with a part of their brain that is 2 years old. It's the middle part of the brain, like the amygdala and the hippocampus, where temper tantrums live. And in fact, 2 and 3-year-olds really need to be having temper tantrums because that part of their brain is really growing. And so, if your child is triggered into a state where they no longer have access to the prefrontal cortex, which is where they can think clearly and listen to your instruction, a lot of this comes from Dan Siegel's work on the whole brain child, then what they need is to be met and connected into the part of them that is younger and is feeling unsafe. So even though everything inside of you wants to say, come on, get it together, that's actually going to exacerbate the feeling. And instead, my instruction is to soften, meet that younger space in your child and let them know there's nothing wrong with you. I'm here with you. You're safe. I believe you that this feels really big. And support them in the co-regulation to come back down to center. And the more that you can extend your heart and your nervous system and your regulation capacity in those moments, the more your child will actually learn how to do it on their own. And that's not to say anything goes. There's always space later on once you're both in a grounded moment to talk about, like, what can we do differently? Like, do you feel like maybe there was way too much sugar leading up to that moment, or we didn't quite slow down and connect? Like, what can we do differently in the future? But in the moment of big feelings, what's really needed is for a child to feel supported and like they're not alone and they can come back to center in the presence of someone that loves them.
And the fascinating bit is that for the most part, when kids do fall into these highly emotional states, the parents, the first thing that we were taught by our parents who had literally no training and no conversation, they were raised by people who had just endured the war and the depression. The first thing they do is, stop it or I'm going to walk away. I caught myself saying that one time when Jonah was about 5 or 6 and I couldn't believe it, and repatterned that right away after reading Dan Siegel's book and Biology of Transcendence, a few other books that really helped me back then. But this is important, I think, not just for children, but for humans, for couples. If you find your person, child, partner, parent, sibling is dysregulated and you care about the world, our listener, it might be interesting to consider what Sophie just said and actually become the one who is regulated, sturdy, stable, steady, constructive, and present. And I found when Jonah was smaller, that was the best thing that I could do. I had to find it the hard way, sort of by trial and error, that whispering would also be great for him. And sure enough, even now, I mean, he's older now and we don't have strife like we did when he was younger. Now we're totally cool. But, it was like, instead of yelling, I would just be like, Jonah, We cannot do this. We need to connect and remember what's really happening here. I love you. How can I help? And that
Yeah.
was everything. It was
Yeah.
everything. Changed everything.
Well, no one responds well to feeling shamed or like they're wrong and unloved. And when you're being yelled at, or when you're little and you look back up at your parent and you feel like you're freaking them out and overwhelming them and you're the reason that they're not okay and you're also not okay, it's like a swirl of chaos.
The
And
worst.
it really does take a brave parent to learn how to be in deep connection with themselves so that they can start to track those moments and find center and come back to regulation, and then be able to offer that loving whisper and that I'm here with you in it. What can we do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dan Siegel's book has been extraordinary for me. I had him on the podcast and I got to really just like thank him profusely. I believe we might have mentioned this in that episode, but I'm not sure. In the Biology of Transcendence, Dr. Alan Shore made quite an appearance in there and changed my life and the life of my kid by talking about shame, stress, and like you said, how terribly destructive it is for not just the body, the emotional body, the mental body, the neurology of a child, and how shame stress actually serves to deprogram the part of the brain, to devalue the part of the brain, to take circulation from the part of the brain that is responsible for creativity.
Wow.
For imaginative thinking. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. And speaking of how I work with kids here, it's a play therapy approach. So the idea is that kids' first language is play, and they can communicate so much more effectively through play than anything else. There's actually a Plato quote: you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation. And as you mentioned that, I'm reminded of this little boy I worked with a couple years ago, and he came in after having some really difficult shaming in a school setting. It was a religious-based school, and there was just the mentality there was more of a shaming one. And he was a sensitive child. So whereas some children might have just let that brush off their shoulder, I think shame can be hard for everyone, but it's not as sensitive to some. He was really taking that one moment when the teacher made him wrong for not having the perfect handwriting into his self-concept. And as he worked through the shame in the play therapy process by just letting it be seen, like the shame was projected all over the toys, all over me, like everything was wrong, everything was bad, it was just chaos, and I just gave it space and witness. By the end of his process, I work with kids over 8 sessions. So by session 6, where he was in a much more empowered state, it was incredible to see how connected he was to himself and how he was accessing creativity. He was like singing and creating and with me. And I just love that example of letting the shame be seen and moved through. And then when that cleared, there was space for him to be in his best creative self.
Beautiful. Wow. The scandal and the sort of fix, the solution to shame stress for the parent who might be listening to us who just shamed their kid a couple of hours ago. We love you. And you don't have to worry about it because there is a solution. As soon as you remember, as soon as you can, go to the child and in no uncertain terms, in very precise, observant terms, in fact, apologize to the kid. I'm really sorry that I said that you were wrong. I'm really sorry that I told you were stupid. I'm really sorry that I yelled. I'm really sorry that I dragged you by the arm. Whatever you did, I'm really sorry for that. And in classic NBC fashion, if I had it to do it over again, here's what I would do. Could we do the do-over right now, if it's appropriate? Or tell the child what you would do differently if you had the whole situation to do over again. And guess what? In a child's mind that doesn't have a mortgage and doesn't have car payments and doesn't have grades yet, that child really receives your apology as a new possibility in their life. And I found this to be one of the most effective, touching ways to connect with my kid.
Yes. One of my teachers, the creator of Synergetic Play Therapy, Lisa Dion, she says that relationship is entirely rupture and repair. Like that's all it is the rupture, the disconnection, and then the coming back together. And I think where we miss the point is when we get stuck in our doubt and our shame and we don't offer the repair and the apology.
Wait, what is this person's name? Relationship is nothing but rupture and repair? What?
Lisa Dion. Yeah. Like that's all it is. It's you rupture and you repair and you rupture and you repair. And
Oh my God.
yeah, I love that. That's a big part of my course is like learn all of these things, try all the methods, and then ultimately mess up and repair and repair and repair. And I even offer games like, I think this was from Dan Siegel, but it's you're on Netflix, let's pause and rewind and redo. Like it also gets to be fun because kids want it to be a game. It is all a game.
Oh, the do-over was the best.
Yeah.
He loved it.
Yeah.
Those were the most successful moments of my parenting, I feel, was the do-over after I completely fucked up. Sorry to curse.
Yeah, no, I've also been playing with like just letting my child be right, even if I know it's not true, because I want to see what that feels like for them. Because in so many ways, kids don't have power and control in their life. And just last night, my stepdaughter was setting up an entire world of Shopkins. And I had already given another 5 or 10 minutes when it was time to take a bath. And it reached a point where I was like in my body ready to set the boundary. And I just said, like, it's time now. And in that moment, she's a sensitive child. And one of the traits is being a perfectionist, which is like such a big one. She messed up and she was so upset. And it was entirely my fault. Like I was literally 20 feet from her in that moment. Like there's no way that I messed it up. But I understood that energetically I did because I was rushing her. And I also understood that she has some changes happening in her life and she really needed a moment of release. And so, whereas in the past, I might have gotten defensive and been like, I hear you. And also, there's no way that I messed that up. I tried on just meeting her experience and I gave her some space. She was really upset. And then I said, I'm really, really sorry. You were really focused and you were really in your creative space and I rushed you and that made you mess up and I'm really sorry. Like I just giving her that apology.
Yeah. I'm so excited about Lisa Dion. I'm totally going to pursue that conversation because that really it was one of those moments I just opened up a whole vista of truth for me that relationship is all about rupture and repair forever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Lisa Dion's
comforting.
amazing. She has
So
a lot
comforting.
of nuggets that I think you'll love. The other thing I most learned from her, she trained me to be a therapist at her institute. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they bring therapists through a program where you see a child for 8 sessions over 6 days and you're watched through a one-way mirror. And so you get to be in that experience with a child moving from disempowerment to empowerment, and you also get to watch others. But there's a lot of important tenets of her work, but the number one is authenticity and congruency and how children need to be with adults that are in their authenticity and like what they're saying is what they feel and what they mean.
Because so often it's just not the case.
And she links that with nervous system regulation and dysregulation. And so it's really amazing work.
I still contend it's so much more about the parent than the kid. Like, whatever. The kid could be however the kid is. But if the parent is dysregulated, there's no hope. The parent has to work on the parent.
Absolutely. And one of the tenets of the rooted rhythm method is to trust and honor your child's process as a mirror of your own process. Like that children are our mirrors. Yeah. So
say more.
Just that children are our sacred reflections. Like the more we can embrace our own activated states, the more our kids can do the same and the more we can model coming back to ourselves and connecting and they can do that too. And that we're all growing together and keyword is growing. Like this idea from yoga that the illusion of permanence creates suffering, like nothing is permanent. So especially with kids, like there's so much science right in front of you that their brains are growing and shifting. And you as their parent is also growing and shifting with them, but you're it's a together thing. It's not you're in some position of power over.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would love to address briefly before we close your work with EMDR. This, for our listener, in case you haven't heard of it, is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, right? Eye movement, okay. And I've done it. And in my experience, and then you can sort of let me know if this is relevant to what you do with the kids, I was able to repattern a certain moment, a certain set of moments that continuously happened in my childhood where I rewrote the story for myself as I would have loved for it to have gone. As furthermore, I think it should or would have gone if both of my parents had been completely regulated. And so in rewriting the story during my sessions, I found a great sense of completion and confirmation, affirmation that what I thought should be happening could happen in some, like, not like an alternate universe, but like in some parallel universe where if they had both kind of held it together in a certain way, this is what would have happened. And this is how I would have felt. And this is how I feel right now. It's literally how I feel about the whole situation. I don't have any remorse. I don't have any regret. I don't have any sadness or shame or guilt or anger. I really feel like having reprocessed it in this particular way, clear, clean, loving, instead of tense and fraught, I felt like I was reborn. It was like a half-hour session. I know. That's what you do with the kids, though.
It's incredible. Yeah, I do it with kids, and I also do it a lot with parents. I'll explain what it is, but I mentioned that boy who was moving from shame to empowerment and creativity, and he was really oriented well to the play therapy process, but his mom ended up doing her own EMDR process with me after, on where she was offered shame-based parenting, and she was then like projecting that and recreating it on her children. And so it's like we can all reprocess together. And what EMDR does is it uses bilateral movement from right to left to replicate what's happening during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And that's the time of our sleep cycles where we're dreaming and we're processing. So if you've ever had the experience of, I think I'll just sleep on it and it will feel less charged tomorrow, that's a really good method for things to process. But sometimes in our lives, especially if you're sensitive, if things happen too fast and too soon, they don't get processed properly. And we end up linking difficult things that happen to us with self-concepts like I must just be permanently damaged, or I'm overwhelmed, or whatever it is. And what EMDR does, in my eyes, is it's an opportunity for radical self-responsibility. You get to target the difficult moments and the negative beliefs that you have associated with them, and literally, like you said, rewrite the story. By first, I imagine in your process, you first moved into the pain and into the trigger, and you let it
So
be
sad.
seen. Yeah,
So sad.
Yeah, like feeling the pain of it. And then as you move through it, it doesn't have to own you, and things that are really charged become less charged.
That's right.
Yeah. I've done it for a lot of different things. I love EMDR for myself, but even just like getting attacked by a dog and then getting a little nervous whenever I was by dogs, I got to decharge that. It was like, oh, that was a difficult, really scary, unexpected moment. And not all dogs are scary. I'm safe.
Not all dogs are scary.
Not all dogs are scary.
Sophie, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to use this also as one of the main resources for my Perceptive Parenting course. It's a really simple audio course, so I look forward to sharing this with the parents in the course as well. I would love to have you come and talk to those parents as well at some point when we do lives every quarter. So grateful. Yeah, I'm so grateful. So grateful. The work that you're doing is so important. And to our listener, you can find Sophie at rootedrhythm.com/course. I want you to check out her course first, and I'm going to spell that for you because rhythm is always such a thing for people. ROOTED RHYTHM.com/course. What a gift you are, Sophie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so very much.
Talk soon.